Breaking news, James Harden may play tonight after all. He has been upgraded to questionable just a couple hours after being upgraded from out to doubtful. Has not played since game 1 10 days ago when he suffered a hamstring injury, but his Nets lost both games in Milwaukee. They don't have Kyrie Irving. So they need James Harden, one would think, if they want to win this series against the Milwaukee Bucks. Tied at 2 games apiece. Game 5 tonight at 8:30 Eastern Time. Harden wants to play, and he has been upgraded to questionable. All right, for more on this, we want to bring in our NBA insider, Bill Reiter. Bill, I mean, this seems like a pregame version of Willis Reed back in the day. From out to doubtful to questionable, and he's headed into the direction like he's going to play tonight.
Yeah, I mean, this is pretty remarkable, Chris, and certainly it looks like the expectation around the league is that he will play. The reports are that he very much wanted to be out there. We saw a somewhat similar story in the opening round of the playoffs with Utah and Donovan Mitchell. He wanted to play. They didn't let him. He was frustrated. He came back, and everything's been rosy and merry for the Jazz as a result. We'll see if it goes that way for the Nets, presuming that Harden's out there and plays, because the other side of the story historically in this postseason has been the Lakers bringing back Anthony Davis, albeit an elimination game from that groin injury, and it was a little too soon. It's a pretty surprising turnaround, really.
Is this, in your opinion, because Kyrie Irving is out, or more in part because they have lost back-to-back games and the series is now a best of 3?
So let me do the cautionary asterisk that I don't know his status. Right, I'm not a doctor, but I think certainly there was a sense, I know there was a sense around the league the last few days that there was going to be massive pressure to get James Harden back on the floor, and the hope was that if they succumbed to that pressure, they did it with the best of intentions as it relates to his health. Because I think it's all the above, Chris. Everything that you cited. The fact that Kyrie is out is critical. When they've got 2 of the big 3 in Brooklyn, they're the best team or one of the 3 best teams in the NBA, depending how you want to measure it. When they've only got 1, they just aren't. Kyrie goes down. The Bucks have found their sea legs, and it feels like their self-confidence in this series. And if Brooklyn wants to win the series, they've got to have more than Kevin Durant. They know it, and we'll see tonight if James Harden plays whether he's up to the task of carrying a pretty heavy burden on his shoulders along with KD.
The Bucks, the favorites to win the series now. They are the favorites tonight, despite being on the road. It was at 4. It has come down in some places a point or 2 because of the news that James Harden is now questionable. What can we really expect, though? Because this was a guy that clearly, I mean, if they had control of this series, he wouldn't be out there. He's coming back to try to save the season. But Bill, as you know, this isn't an injury that just popped up 10 days ago. He's been dealing with this throughout most of the season.
You said it. This has defined his year, and James Harden's been a guy who's been very durable over the course of his career. So I think if you're trying to figure out which way you want to go, I don't have money on this game, and I'm not going to. I mean, to me, this is a pull it off the board kind of a situation, because the reality is, Chris, we don't know. And I think there's a real chance we'll find out in the next 24 hours, or maybe the next 3 or 4 days, depending on how the series goes. Maybe the Nets weren't entirely sure either. He's obviously been cleared. We presume that he's going to play. He wants to play, but you said it, how that hamstring, which has been an issue all year, is an injury that can certainly keep a guy out for a lot longer than the amount of time that he's been out in this version of the injury this season. How it holds up, how he does, is an open question. The season is on the line. The Bucks are certainly not to be underestimated. They have to have more than they have. Joe Harris is their second leading scorer without Kyrie and Harden. He's averaging 12 points per game. 11.5 points per game in this postseason. So they need James Harden. Whether they're actually going to have him or have a hobbled version, depending on what you believe, is how you should bet this thing, and it'll dictate how it goes. And I don't know that any of us have the answers right now.
They were able to win a couple of games without James Harden. They lost Kyrie Irving last game and lost that game immediately. Who's more important to this team right now, if you could have one or the other, James Harden or Kyrie Irving?
It's a great question, and it's when things were going well, and this was a healthy, a full force Brooklyn Nets big 3. It didn't matter, right? It's a great question now, and I personally, I think I would take James Harden. And that's nothing against Kyrie Irving. I mean, these three guys are all world beaters and have been remarkable with the Nets when they've been healthy. But Harden in his time with this team has been nothing short of extraordinary. And the only sort of scenario when you get into the numbers a little bit where one of the three guys were able to raise the Nets at least to a competitive level, that near their expectations was when it was just Harden, that small sample size. So I want all three. I want all three, obviously. But if it's two of the three, I think it's exactly Kevin Durant and James Harden, if I'm that Nets front office, that I want on the floor.
The news this afternoon, James Harden, after being upgraded from out to doubtful, has now been upgraded to questionable, and he wants to play tonight, 8:30 Eastern. Kyrie is not going to play tonight. What's the latest on his injury and when we might be able to see him back out there on the court?
I'll give you what I'm hearing. I'll just tell you it's the exact same thing that I heard about James Harden 3 or 4 days ago. So things are changing quickly, and who knows how much desperation impacts these things. And, God forbid if Harden is rushed back too soon, what they say about Kyrie Irving in a game or a potential game 7. But there's certainly not an expectation that Kyrie is ready to go. We know that he left on crutches after that injury. We know that he left in a walking boot. And we know that this is, and we've seen this from Harden's return, not a must-win game, but pretty darn close. So the sense is that it's going to be a while, that it certainly could be at the end of the series if there's a game 7, and that the Nets would prefer not to have to rush him.
With Kyrie Irving, 40 points in 17 minutes with him on the floor, that's a little over 2.3 or so points per minute. And with him off the court, those many minutes, 40 or so, only averaging about 1.8 points per minute. That's Bill Reiter joining us here on CBS Sports HQ as the Nets are searching for some healthy bodies. They have kind of a 1.5 big three now with Kyrie out, James Harden questionable, iffy. He wants to play. They certainly play better with James Harden on the floor. In round 1, they were averaging 123 points per game with Harden. Only played a few minutes in game 1 of round 2, and they're only averaging 105 points per game. Again, game 5 tonight in Brooklyn, 8:30 Eastern time.
Do you want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis, no yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.